Well, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you are in France, as our esteemed guests are, my name is Andrea Robinson. I'm a master sommelier based here in Napa Valley, same hood as Benchmark Wine Group. So I'm really thrilled to be joining you for this live tasting. We are having breakfast wine this morning because here in Napa Valley, it's 10 o'clock. And so wherever you are, it's definitely the time for champagne. And our very, very special guests who are part of this month's Somm Set offering, we have Thierry Forget and his daughter Marie coming to us live from La Belle La Région, the beautiful region of Champagne in the village of Lude, where they're based. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us, Thierry and Marie.
Thank you for welcoming us.
Thank you. Welcome in Champagne. I'm happy to taste with you.
Thank you so much. We're thrilled to have you. We're actually, I think a lot of you have had the chance to check out the offering of these special club champagnes. This is a really, really limited, extremely artisanal, handcrafted offering from the wonderful Napa Valley-based importer Grace Under Pressure. In today's tasting, of course, we're featuring the three extraordinary special wines from Forget-Chemin, which are members of the Club Trésor, producing special club champagnes, of which part of the offering is included. And so everybody purchased different things, and I hope all of you have a bottle of one of those open. We're actually starting with the 2010 Magnum, because it is a very special, highly unusual thing for a Club Trésor member to bottle in Magnums. And of course, the beauty of Magnums is that they give you this incredible longevity and development that is so different from a 750 milliliter bottle, such that this 2010 with 11 years on it is tasting beautifully fresh, but also incredibly complex. So Thierry, I want to start out and ask you, how many growers are bottling Magnums in the Trésor, and what made you decide to do that?
Okay. The Club Trésor de Champagne represents 25 wineries, and on average 3 or 5 wineries bottling in Magnum. In fact, at the beginning, the Magnum Club is for my Vinoteca only. And after, I produce a little more Magnum for gift for my friends and for my family. And then, as the result was beautiful, I have decided to produce a little more and to begin to sell in Magnum. Magnum in Vinoteca, because the neck of Magnum is the same of standard bottles of half bottles. So the ratio air and wine is better for Magnum for aging. But now I produce Magnum to drink always. Not only to Vinoteca.
Not only to keep.
Yes, not only
Excellent.
to keep.
Excellent. Very well said. And as we're tasting it, I want to jump right into the glass, because I think I'd love for everybody who is tasting along to chat your comments in. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand and we will be giving you the opportunity to actually ask your question live if you'd like. It's always fun to do that. You're welcome, of course, to just throw it in the chat and we'll keep our eyes on everything. But let's jump into the glass of this 2010 Magnum. I'm tasting it out of the Magnum. And really, truly, as we go, and because we've had this open now for about 45 minutes here, yay. And I've been smelling it, and it keeps evolving and evolving. But one thing that struck me right from the get-go was a beautiful toasted nut marzipan quality, but also on the savory side, almost as though you toasted the nuts and then you have both a little salt and a little sugar, like they're sort of like those caramelized nuts or something. Tell me a little bit about what you're getting in the glass. How should people think about tasting this wine? What do you taste? What do you smell?
Yes, in fact, I'm agree with you. I have toasted. I have a little bread, and after, because in fact, normally in my champagne I have secondary aroma, and in this I have begin tertiary aroma. I don't know if the translation is good because sorry for my English.
No, it's
And
okay. Tertiary aromas in
so
English.
now for this champagne I have also a little cafe
Oh, yes.
Coffee, yeah.
coffee and
Mhm.
apricot.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. Wow,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So apricot, almost like a dried apricot or an apricot confiture, because
Yes,
it's
exactly.
concentrated, right? That is absolutely beautiful.
And
I also,
I have also honey, a little honey,
Honey, yeah.
honey, yes,
honey.
honey for sure. And those are all, so you said you're the tertiary or tertiary aromas, and those are all things that are, I associate with time on the lees and then further time in the bottle. So making this wine, how much time was spent on tirage in the Magnum before you bottled it and disgorged and bottled it?
Sur lit pendant combien de temps?
6 ans.
6 years.
6 years.
Wow.
6 years.
Wow.
6 years on the lease. Yeah.
So 6 years to do that complexity, but it also, explain that a little bit, because I think what people don't necessarily realize is that time on the lees, you're getting the degradation of the yeast that give all this complexity to the wine, but at the same time, the presence of the yeast keeps the freshness. So it's not getting tired at all, right?
Yes.
In fact, there is two big ways with yeast, with sediment of yeast. The first is the sediment prevent the oxidation of wine. And the second way is the yeast, the autolysa of yeast, I think is a good word in English.
Autolysis.
Autolysis of
Autolysis.
yeast give a lot of flour, a lot of acid amine and protein.
Yes.
And it is very important for the complexity of the wine after.
100%.
So it is a kind of problem for my Vinoteca, for example, because I don't know if I have to conserve the champagne with lees or to conserve the champagne disgorge. And as I don't know exactly, I conserve the two, a part with lees and a part disgorge. Because we know now in champagne that the fact to add sugar with the liquor of expedition,
right,
after the disgorging,
yes,
the sugar participate in the aging of the wine. And sometimes it is very interesting. So, two possibilities.
And I think the other thing that we're seeing is because the yeast protect from oxidation for such a long time, then now as the wine is open and exposed to oxygen, it's evolving the fragrance and the flavor, just continuing.
But
it's extremely subtle.
The role of yeast in the bottles, it is the same for the wine in vat, in fact. You can, or in barrels. You can conserve the wine more time if you conserve the lees. Instead, if the lees are eliminated, it's no good to conserve wine. In vat, bottle, in barrel. It's the same for always.
So they protect the wine and allow for it to stay youthful and fresh for a long time. Can you talk about the fermentation and aging of the Vin Clair, the base wines for this? Are you using stainless tanks? Are you using any wood? How do you do it?
So I use a stainless tank with regular temperature.
Yes.
And for this wine and for all the wine of my winery, alcoholic fermentation, then malolactic fermentation, always. Yes, because it is the style of the house. So I want to conserve it since the fourth generation, and to have this kind of creamy wine and white fruit at the beginning, and after creamy wine is important to have malolactic fermentation.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's unusual, but very distinctive for certain houses to put their Vin Clair through malolactic, and you're not getting buttery from that, but you're getting creamy, right? And that's, you said that creamy multiple times. So you're not getting the movie theater popcorn smell, but you're getting that creamy, round softness that makes the vin clair actually taste, you know, kind of good on their own. They're not so harsh, right? Is that fair to say?
Exactly. It's a traditional in our house. It's also a way to better master the acidity of our wines and later our champagne, because it's very important for that. And it's also a matter of how many things and products you want to add in your vinification inside the tank, and the letting the malolactic fermentation go as itself. It's also more natural to do it so. So we think for the wine and for our way of work, it's a good decision to do that way.
To undergo malolactic fermentation, in fact, we do nothing. And if you want to avoid, we have to do something to prevent the malolactic fermentation.
Yes.
As malolactic fermentation is natural process,
yes.
After alcoholic fermentation, the malolactic takes place, and we have just to wait.
That is so interesting, because you would have lower pHs but relative to other regions in the world. So you would think that the malolactic would be shy or hard to happen, but your basically your estate and your environment, it just naturally happens. So it's meant to be, right?
Yes, exactly that. Yeah.
That is so fascinating. With the 2010, can you tell us about the blend of the cépage or blend of grapes in this wine?
Yes, in fact, you have Chardonnay and Pinot Meunier. 46% of Pinot Meunier and 54% of Chardonnay. But the originality of the blend is in fact two origins for Chardonnay. Apart from Lude, my village where the winery takes place, is installed, and Chardonnay from Tessy, and two villages 10 kilometers away, separated, but two wines very different, because Lude is a slope.
Yes, a
côte.
Yes.
Slope, slip, and Tessy is gently slope and very dry, windy vineyards. I can say windy vineyards. So very dry. So you have two Chardonnay, but two different Chardonnay in the blend, and after Pinot Meunier. Pinot Meunier run. We speak about the aging with the tertiary aroma, but in fact, Pinot Meunier, it can be dangerous for aged wine, for old wine, because the evolution is very quick.
Interesting. So
And Pinot Meunier give peach aroma, something like that.
Peach aromas. Okay.
Yes, very fruity.
There is so much discussion about Pinot Meunier and its sort of emergence in importance with Champagne. Can you talk about why, what's changing that's making people sort of more excited about Meunier?
In fact, Pinot Meunier, two things important: the wine, the blend after, but Pinot Meunier is a great variety for north of France, only in Champagne, in fact. And last week, frost in Champagne a lot.
Lots.
But Pinot Meunier resists. And we lose perhaps a big part of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but Pinot Meunier, the bud break after, so no damage for the frost.
Wow, that is
so
fortunate.
It's interesting for the vineyards, and it is interesting for the blend, because they give something over of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Fantastic. That is really interesting. It'll be interesting to see as time goes on, if you could, and I'm sure you'll be the first person to experiment with this, if you could use Meunier as your still red wine in a rosé. You'll probably tell me that's a crazy idea, but you know, who knows, right?
Ça fait du bon vin.
No comment.
Cette année.
Not this year. We think that this year it couldn't. Last year it wasn't possible. But Pinot Meunier is very it's very alike with Pinot Noir. So it's totally it won't be a surprise if we can do that. And maybe this year, because of the frost, Pinot Meunier will be very important in the blend and will become also important in the rosé. We will see after the tasting.
Wow. I think that's great. David Parker says the 2010 Club Brut is already beautifully complex and very balanced and lithe. Lithe, I think, means I think of lithe as a very flowing, very elegant structure. And so I think that's beautiful. He's asking, thank you for asking, Dave, what is the dosage for the 2010? Do you have that in your memory?
The dosage is 8 grams of grape sugar. 8 grams of grape sugar, because for dosage, I use only grape sugar. So 8 grams is a Brut, below Brut, because you know that the border of Brut and extra Brut is 6 grams. So it is 8 grams. And 8 grams, normally, it is my balance. So often I chose this dosage for my club, for my blend club.
Nice. So I want, before we move on to the next wine, I have a couple of questions about food with regards to this wine, because it's so complex. And I think one of the things that Americans do that we need to change our habits is we treat champagne as a toast or an aperitif, something for a special occasion, or the aperitif without thinking about it as a wine, which it is, and something to pair with the meal. And as I'm smelling this and I'm getting the toasted nuts and the really deep complexity, and then there's almost like this, you mentioned the malolactic, and it's starting to explain to me, there's almost like this browned butter beurre noisette type of character on the finish. And I'm immediately thinking of Truite à la Meunière, right? Trout Meunière.
Yes.
Yes, because of the toasted almonds and the browned butter, and then that lemon, of course. But what are the types of dishes or pairings that you would put with this wine?
In fact, this club is made for sharing with friends. But we speak about risotto.
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 Sounds great.
And perhaps apricot tart. I don't know if it's...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, apricot tart. Absolutely.
Yes.
Especially if the crust is maybe the nutty crust, like with the marzipan crust, like you would use in a pear tart. That would be amazing. Lydia Richards is saying yum to the risotto. She's liking that idea. And I agree with you, because a lot of times the classic risotto has a lot of Parmigiano Reggiano, which like Special Club long-aged champagne, all that aging gives it that umami and that nutty quality. So you just link those two up so perfectly. Plus the texture, risotto is rich. You've got bubbles and great acidity to cut through the richness. But also, to me, acidity in wine, my husband always laughs when I say this, but I think it's true. Acidity in wine launches the flavors of the food that it's served with. In the same way that if you squeeze lemon on your oysters, or you put, in our case, mustard on a hot dog at the ballpark, you're using the acid to make the food pop. And so the wine can do that when you pair great champagne. Any other food pairings? Sorry, go ahead.
I have another idea to pair with this 2010 champagne, but I know in USA perhaps it is a debate because we love doing this kind of champagne with foie gras.
Yes, I like foie gras. I know I'm not supposed to like foie gras, but I really do. So, yes, and for people who don't want to have that, you can also have a beautiful pâté de campagne, which would give you a similar taste profile, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
they sell a wonderful one at our local market. So what's for lunch? But that's a great idea. Yes. And again, you have the beautiful acidity and the bubbles that cut through the richness of the foie gras, but you also have that heady intensity of the flavor of the foie gras that you want to.
And another possibilities we love in champagnes, but it is not a French product. It is a Parmesan cheese.
Yes.
Yes.
In the risotto or itself?
Yes.
By itself. Yes. Right.
But
exactly.
This champagne with Parmesan.
Yeah. Merveilleux. Perfect. Totally true. Yes.
It is a gourmandise.
Gourmandise. Yes. It is. It's one of the perfect pairing, we would call it, and why life is worth living. Aside from your family, it's those gourmandise food and wine pairings. So that's fantastic. And we'd love for all of you in the chat to to toss in your favorite champagne and food pairings. Let us know what you like to pair. I'll give you my guilty pleasure pairing. This is very American. Well, part of it is. I like to pair champagne, especially champagne like this, with truffled popcorn. And yes, Americans, I don't know if the French eat popcorn, but it's what we would eat at the movie theater.
Oh.
Right?
We don't know it, but the idea is interesting. We would like to try.
Okay. Well, when we come visit you, as soon as we can come visit you again, we'll bring our air popper and our popcorn and our truffle salt, and we'll make you truffle popcorn. And then you'll have to, okay. David Parker's saying he had a Monte Cristo sandwich with his champagne. So and that sounds fantastic actually, because you got the Gruyere cheese and the buttery crusty bread and the ham.
Yes.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And when you take a sandwich and a very expensive champagne and you average out the cost, you can afford this, right? It's very, very good way, smart way to do it. Same with popcorn.
That's true.
So, so I'm going to encourage people, because the next wine that we're going to talk about actually is the 2015 Special Club. But while you're getting that open, while you're getting it poured, Mark Paul says anything salty, potato chips and fried chicken are great with champagne. So true. But while you're getting your next wine poured, if you have gotten that wine and want to taste along with us, Thierry, if you could just talk to us a little bit about how the house of Forget-Chemin got started. How did it come together? What's the history?
Forget-Chemin is the fourth generation of wine growers. My grandfathers begin with mainly sell grapes to big negociants in Champagne and produce only 5,000 bottles per year. My grandfathers increase we say in Champagne, the manipulation, the fact to elaborate wine and champagne.
Yes.
And he produced at this time 25,000 bottles. Then my father stopped to sell grapes and to produce only champagne. And he produced 50,000 bottles per year. I arrived in 1991, sorry. I am enologist, and after the work in different winery in Champagne and in Bordeaux, I come in family winery estate, and I learn my work with my father, and the revolution, the changement, my work arrived in 2002. Or I organize and decide the work, and we begin the integrated farmhouse, integrated production.
Yes.
The sustainable, reasonable in 2002. We stop herbicide or weed killer. We stop weed killer to plow vineyards. We stop insecticide. We stop chemical fertilizer. And now it is we analyze the situation, and you continue in sustainable way or organic way. It is the question of now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. It is I think it's a really a big deal, and it seems to be that, especially in the Champagne region, that
yes.
a lot of people are evaluating and converting and figuring out which parts of the equation they can do on a sustainable level and maintain quality and maintain the health of the vineyards. So
Yes.
are you encouraged and optimistic that you'll be able to strike that balance and keep to minimal chemical inputs and things like that? Are you feeling like it's going to work out?
Tu penses que ça va marcher de continuer vers le bio?
Oh, I hope. In fact, I am scientist. I don't know.
Yes, he's a scientific guy.
I am scientific. So I want analyze. I
Yeah.
want analyze, and I want make some experience. And I know I go slowly because I want know all. I want
Yes.
understand. In fact, so it is a long way. And
Science takes forever.
in fact, since 2 years, I have stopped completely chemical product in my vineyards.
Yes.
And all is good. The grapes are good, good grape health, and good quality and good wine. But I think 2 years is not long enough to be sure.
Right.
Because the last years was kindly years for wine growers. Friendly years for the climate, no damage. So I think it is possible. I won't continue, and after 3-4 years, I think it will be good to become organic. But be careful. Organic in USA is not exactly the same of bio in Europe. The rules in USA are more restrictive.
Yes.
It is a good thing for you, I think. But
Right.
for the grapes is the same. The train of vineyards is the same, bio and organic in USA. But the vinification is different.
Right.
It is too complex to explain now the difference between the organic way in USA and the bio way in Europe. But we have to know it is different.
It's different. It's stricter on things like sulfur and a variety of things. So
yes.
And more. So I agree with you. But I think that the focus on the vineyards is great because the soil health is critical to the planet. But also, would you agree the soil health is critical to the terroir expression, right? Because if you are changing the chemistry of the soil, you're changing the expression of wine, right?
Absolutely. It is important to understand and to know what if you change something, what changed in your wine.
Right. That's the scientist view.
Yes, and the soil and the vineyard, we have it in heritage, meaning the vineyard, the vine plants we are exploiting now. We didn't plant them. My grandfather or my grandfather planted them.
Wow.
So it's very important to be aware of that and to respect that. It's a very long-term thing, the soil and the vineyard. So it's very, very important to manage that.
That's fantastic. Yes, because you have old vines and they can be a real treat and a real benefit if you're taking care of them. So that's fantastic. Let's jump to the 2015 Special Club and tell us a little bit about. Well, tell us about the blend and what was the vintage like? How did that come together for you? Oh, my husband's.
So 2015.
We have a visit.
Sorry, we are speaking about 2015, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So 2015, it is another word, but it is two grape variety. The blend from Pinot Noir and Chardonnay 50-50. It is classic in my club blend to have 50-50 Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. It is usual. 2015 is interesting in Champagne. We say in French, I don't know if the translation is good for you, but you can help me. We say the stars are aligned. You understand this
The
image?
styles are aligned or lined?
Yes,
That means in France, all
was perfect.
was perfect.
Oh, the stars aligned. Yes.
Yes.
We say the exact same thing.
Yes.
Yes.
You
Yes.
can't make you can't make mieux.
A better year.
You can't
We
do better.
cannot imagine a better year for the climate and the grapes
Right.
we've got.
The spring.
Everything perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and when we speak about 2015, we speak about 2002, older vintage. And 2002 was beautiful. The wine was beautiful, and we bottling. And 6 years after, we know it is good. But six years after, we begin to taste it, and catastrophe. It was not good. It was exceptional. and all the winery bottles a few parts, or perhaps 2,000 bottles, 3,000 bottles.
Oh,
And
God.
it is not good because we are not happy, in fact.
We wanted more of it.
And
Yeah.
2015, it is the same result.
Mm.
All is good, like 2002. But this time we produce more, and we are very happy because the result is exceptional, and we have more bottles of 2015.
That's very exciting. And so the Pinot Noir is that is from your Mailly vineyards,
Yes.
your Grand Cru vineyards.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. Mainly my Pinot Noir take place in Verzenay, Mailly, in Lude, and for this blend I use the Pinot Noir from Mailly. Mailly gives me some very good Pinot Noir. I use it for red wine when I produce rosé,
Yes.
and a part in white vinification for my blend for club.
Fantastic. So with for those of you who are tasting this wine, we actually had a little sort of pre-call last weekend, and we were talking about it. And just looking back at my notes, I really we were struck by the yellow and white peach fruit
Yes.
quality to this. Very, very beautiful. And then there were also some more exotic pithy fruits like Meyer lemon and quince. And then this kind of hint of salinity, savory salinity that comes through in the finish. Can you talk a little bit about your, how you describe the wine and a little bit about what types of things you'd pair with it?
In fact, it is interesting because we speak about 2010, and 2010 you have more tertiary aroma, and you have the little gold color. For 2015, you have the champagne color. In fact, you have the straw yellow.
Straw,
but,
exactly.
But I think perhaps in 2-3 years, the color evolution will go towards gold. But now it is always the color of champagne.
Yes.
So it is interesting because when you taste, when you go in mouth with these champagnes, your mind wait freshness and wait young champagne, because the color is always the champagne of young champagne, classic champagne.
Yes.
So and the result is exactly what your mind expect.
Yes. No, I think you're right. And as I was looking back at my notes and also thinking about pairings and about seasonality, and the fact that the younger wine, the 2015, is still more énervé, more intense. Its acidity is still more like a thoroughbred. It's energetic. It made me think about something with hollandaise sauce, because you have both the acidity of the hollandaise, but also the incredible richness from all the butter. But what are the types of things that you would pair with the 2015 Special Club?
In fact, we love pair with fish.
Yes.
I can use French word, but I think the gastronomy is the same across the world. Sommelier.
Sommelier, absolutely.
Filet de Talbot, Talbot
Turbo.
filet, Talbot.
Yes,
And
turbo filet.
in French, it is a crevette.
Scallop,
Crab?
I think.
Scallop.
Oh, Saint-Jacques is scallop. And then
Yes.
crevette is maybe crab, I think. I'm not sure.
I don't know the translation.
But this is the area,
Right.
the fish and the shell.
Yes,
The
fish and shell, we say in
Shellfish.
French.
Right, sweet
Shellfish.
Shellfish that are delicate, and also delicate white fillet fish.
Yes.
But I think
Exactly.
the à la Meunière is a great way of doing it. It has the capers,
Yes.
and so you have that acid that, you know, aligns with the champagne.
Saint-Jacques, I think, is good, but no oysters, no shell-like oysters.
Right.
It is too sweet for oysters, too
Yes.
round for oysters. But for all the others, it's very interesting.
Fascinating, right? Because the oysters are so briny, they kind of take over and overpower the wine a little bit. Fascinating. I love it. I love it. Wow. Okay. So I had a couple of other questions just generally about the Club Trésor, and I was wondering when you decided to be a part of that, and why.
In fact, my father is members of the club since the beginning.
Wow.
In 1971. And
so
the first
a founding member.
yes. And the first vintage was 1973. And after 1976, 1979, and very free good vintage.
Wow.
And you see the special club have a special format.
Special shape of the bottle.
And yes. And all the members can use this shape, this size.
The shape and the embossed
logo.
Character. Yeah.
Yes.
But before bottling, winemaker have to receive the agreement of the club, of the jury of club,
Right.
before bottling. And after the 5-6 years, after disgorging, before the sale, a new agreement to be sure that all the champagne are very good. Because as we share the same format, we have share the same level of quality.
It's incredible. It's a huge commitment, because basically what you're saying is that you decide if you feel that your bottle that your wine, your cuvée, your particular cuvée is going to make it to the quality level and the strict standards for Special Club, then you get them to taste your assemblage to get the approval to use the bottle. But then after the time on tirage, you have to get their approval again to actually sell the wine, because now it's in the bottle, and so you're really investing, you're making a bet on yourself to be sure, to do that. And I think that that's a very it requires you to be so on, well, I'm gonna use an American phrase now, on your game. You really have to be doing everything right to feel that sense of confidence and trust to make that investment. And I think that that's something people need to understand about Special Club.
In Special Club philosophy, you have two things. We want consumer trust in the bottles. When they see a bottle in the shop or in a restaurant, they have to be sure the high level of quality. And the second philosophy of members of club is to share our progress. We make all the season long. We organize meeting to speak about vineyards, to speak about vinification, to speak about marketing, to speak about price list, to speak about all the world of champagne's politic. We speak about all.
Right.
And we share our progress. And for example, in club, I am the responsible of Vineyards Commission. So every year, I organize to meet and we speak about the vineyards,
Fantastic.
the evolution of the vineyard, the history, and how we can make more and we can progress.
I think that's really special because it's, you know, you put a lot of perspectives and a lot of experience together, and you get a lot of value out of that you're sharing amongst one another, which I think is really, really, really cool, all for the purposes of learning and progressing together and elevating the quality that the customers can count on and be excited about. So I think it's a really, really big deal that
And,
you.
and I guess, and you have an example. We speak sometimes about that. Champagne Barra have decided to produce a rosé club in 2004, and all the others winery this and taste, and the result was beautiful. And now some of winery like me, we produce rosé in club, and my first vintage rosé was 2014.
Well, that's a great segue to this last line, because and it's amazing to me when I think about it that because that was it showed a lot of foresight, or maybe it was just luck, but that sparkling wine and rosé, and therefore rosé sparkling wine would be so popular now, right?
Yes.
That it's exciting. But so we're going to segue to that, but I think I have Mark is going to ask a question live. And so if we can, we'll if everybody who's going to be tasting the rosé, go ahead and get your glass poured. But Mark, jump on here and ask your question. We have his name, but
thanks.
he's not.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, for some reason on my computer, the pictures didn't come. Anyway, you don't need to see my face anyway. I'm not so beautiful. So my question was, what was it specifically do you think about the maybe weather, presumably, that made the 2015 wine so exceptional?
Great question.
La météo de l'année 2015, pourquoi elle l'a fait perfection?
In fact, to have a good years, you have a good nature and respect the season. And 2015, the winter was very cold and minus 15 degrees. And it's good to the rest of the vineyards, and it's good to eliminate a lot of disease like mushroom or something like that, bacteria and other bad animals. And the spring is very important because we want water, because vineyards want is necessary to have rain. But the rain begins at the beginning of spring and after dry. So another thing to eliminate disease. And the temperature was not very hot. And it is a problem during the summer now in Champagne since different years. But, I think it is because the changement of climate, perhaps. And it's hot, warm, canicule. I don't know in English when the weather is very, very, very hot. In California, for example, or some part in USA, is usual to have 40 degrees, I know, but in Champagne is no good. And in 2015, it is the good temperature of summer, 25 and 30 degrees. And another thing good in 2015 is the wind, always the wind. And the wind is beautiful for fruit.
Yes.
Specifically for grapes. And after, you know, in fact, winter, spring make the quantity, but August made quality.
Right.
And we arrive at the end of the summer in 2015 with a good vineyards, a lot of grapes, and all is beautiful. But it is not win, because August is very important. And August was beautiful. And after it's not finished, because the weather during the ripening, during the maturity is very important. You can lose all if during the harvest or just before the harvest, the weather change. It was the case in 1917, for example. In 1917, we have the same way of 2015, but in 2017, it's raining
Yes.
during the harvest, and we lose the quality. In 2015, yeah, it was beautiful during the harvest, and not very hot temperature during the harvest is very important because the acidity of grapes in Champagne disappear if during the harvest the temperature is more than 25 degrees. But in 2015, like 96, we conserve the very good quality of the grapes. So we can't make more.
Better doesn't exist.
Okay.
So all throughout, you're saying basically the really cold winter diminishes the number of mold spores and other pests that might attack the
Yes.
vineyard. And so then you had a beautiful flowering to give you a good quantity, no weather irregularities in the springtime. Then you just have this nice even heat without excessive heat and no precipitation through to harvest. So basically somebody did something right and Mother Nature was very, very happy in 2015 and smiling the whole time. Mark, I think that's a great question.
We have to know that in fact 2015 is nature vintage, and 2010 is a winemaker, wine growers vintage.
Right.
We have to work, we have to battle with nature to produce very good vintage. And in 2015, nothing to do. The
Right.
nature make all good.
That's really cool. So Mark's asking another question, but let's jump. We'll get to your question, Mark, for sure. As far as your picture, I wanted to say that another famous champenois, if I'm going to paraphrase the quote, but I've read that Madame Lily Boulanger back in the day said that drinking champagne makes you beautiful. So next time you want to ask a question, you can feel free to show us your picture, because if you're drinking champagne, you'll be fine. But anyway, let's talk about the 2014 Special Club Rosé. This is such a cool wine, and what you told me when we were talking about it last week was that you were excited about it because all of the Vin Clair tasted like really good wine, but especially the still Pinot Noir. Like that was just a great still red wine on its own. And so that pushed you to really be confident about making this rosé. We'll talk about some tasting notes in a second, but just tell us a little bit about the blend and kind of how it came together.
So first, my rosé is a rosé by blend. That's, you have two possibilities in Champagne: a short maceration, and after we separate juice and skin, or you produce red wine, white wine, and you create a blend. So in fact, I have different red wine, but always from the same origin, Pinot Noir from Mailly, and I add a part of red wine to the white wine. For 2014, the blend is 20% of red wine and 80% of white wine. For example, last week was the bottling of 2020 rosé. I add 5%.
Wow, so big difference.
So sometimes I can between 5 and 20% of red wine to create my blend.
Yes.
And the fact to create a rosé vintage can have to be an evidence. You taste and you have to do it. And you don't look for to create a rosé vintage club. It is an evidence, an étincelle.
A sparkle.
And in fact, we don't look for something. We create, we try, we taste, And when all is good, when you think it is a good moment, the blend is ready.
And so you basically are putting it together and you're watching and it's basically coming to the point where the blend tells you this is the right thing. And if
Yes.
until you get that message, you're not going to do it.
Yes, I don't look for a color or a taste or a smell, a nose. I want a complexity of the three part.
Right.
And because the danger in when you create a rosé is to want a color, but you have not the good taste. And you want a taste, but you have not the good color or the good nose.
Right.
So you try, and sometimes it's arrive.
I think that's the particularity and the beauty of a grower champagne, because you're not making to a recipe for a brand that has to be consistent. You're making a wine.
Yes.
And each wine you're making is itself based on that year and that and that combination, the piece parts that you put together. And I think that's brings me back to the idea that champagne is wine, and it's meant for you said for pairing with great friends, and I agree with that. But for sure, it should be also treated as a wine for the table and for multiple occasions beyond, as we said before, the special toast or the aperitif. When I was tasting this wine, I was really struck by, and I'm just looking at my notes here, by the beautiful dried mushroom, dried cherry. There's a lovely sort of earthy undernote to it. And when I say earthy, I more mean that it's very what's the word? It's very lusty and layered. Like there's a lot of different layers, and it makes me think two things. Number one, that it would be a beautiful wine to pair with even richer dishes like duck, rack of pork, things that have a lot more to them. Truffles in season, the risotto with some truffles. But also I believe that it would evolve. And a lot of people have said to me, once you get the bottle of champagne, don't age it. I have had great luck aging vintage rosé after, obviously after bottling. And so, cellaring it, in other words. What do you think of that? And I'm asking because this is available for people to get and to cellar. And they should know, in my opinion, it will really evolve beautifully in the cellar. But what do you think? And you're welcome to disagree with me, of course.
Le fait de conserver le rosé.
Les gens qui l'achètent, est-ce qu'ils devraient le conserver un peu? Est-ce que c'est une bonne idée?
In fact, I want to add Andrea. I think try to taste the champagne rosé with strawberry.
Oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, the fact to conserve or not to keep or not the rosé, if I explain, it is a rosé by blend, and rosé by blend with special cork. I use mythic cork, very good for conservation. You can conserve it. It is not a problem. But 2014. 2021, 7 years.
Okay.
I think it's enough. It's enough. It's very interesting now. I don't know in 2-3 years how this champagne can evaluate. I think it will be good because the vinification and the bottles and the cork are good. The bottles is green, hard green, dark.
Yes.
So prevent the sunlight.
Yeah.
Because a problem of white wine and specifically rosé wine is the light.
Yes.
And all my champagne, I use green glass. So
I think that's huge.
is better, I think, and it's better for nature, but it's better to prevent problem of bad quality with light. So
Right.
with special cork, with grain glass, you can conserve rosé more time. But if you buy champagne or other rosé in white glass, you have to drink it very quickly.
Right. So if we were able to come over for dinner tonight to your house, which actually it's past dinner time, you're probably starving, but and you were making a main course, so a plat principal for the rosé, what would you serve?
I think I serve poultry.
Poultry, yes.
Grillé.
Roasted
Grilled
Roasted.
poultry. Okay.
Grilled
Roasted. Okay.
Mm.
All right.
But
So a roasted poulet rôti or a
yes.
Exactly.
okay roast chicken sounds good to me.
Yes.
And again, all the tart with
nice.
red fruit, and but without dinner, without lunch, with fruit, with
Just fruit can
just
be
fruit.
good also. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds beautiful. Well, it's getting to be, especially in California, strawberry season. We're going to start to have fresh strawberries from all the local farms available on the roadside stands. So, and a few other, I'm sure there are lots of other places. We saw people who are on from Boston and New York. You'll be a little bit behind us on your strawberry season, but hang on to a bottle or get a couple more so that when those farm stand strawberries come in, you can give that a try. One of our a Vine Affair said truffle fries, so frites, but with truffle salt, right? So fleur de sel, but with the truffle aroma. So that's sort of a big thing in the United States, and in general, we love our fried foods with our great French
It's true
champagne.
that every truffle aroma are very interesting with this kind of blend and champagne. Yes, totally. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us and for all of your great comments. Dave Parker says, great rosé champagne has my vote as the best food matching wine. Great with almost everything. He says ribeye, which is a big steak, to Peking duck, and also salmon to époisse. He thinks it goes with the cheese of Burgundy époisse.
Oh, very good choice.
Yeah.
We love that.
And white chocolate to bread pudding. Okay, David Parker knows how to live. Okay, and before we wrap up, I have 3 minutes to answer Mark's question. Other question, do you use the same amount of sugar in the tirage? I think you mean the dosage. No, maybe not the dosage. I think you mean the dosage for the rosé that you do in whites. So would the dosage on the rosé be the same?
Alors, for the club, yes. For the club, the dosage is 8. For the rosé club, the dosage is 8. But I think the question is interesting because often in champagne, for rosé, the dosage is little more high level.
Wow.
And around 10, 11 grams. Okay. So for my rosé no vintage, usually I create 11 grams for Brut. Okay. But as the time change the wine, is not necessary for rosé club to increase the sugar for dosage. So yes. I conserve the same dosage of white, 8.
I see. Fantastic. And one last question from prior that I promised we'd get to. What changes have you had to make or have you made in response to climate change?
Le changement climatique, qu'est-ce que ça a changé pour toi? Do you have 1 hour?
Well, in fact, we speak a lot about that in Champagne with my friends, wine growers, and the fact is the changement climatic is good for vineyards in Champagne,
right?
But it's not good for planet. So right. It's forbidden for me to say the climate changement is good because it's no good. Right. But in fact, as vineyards in Champagne is an offer vineyard in Europe, it's easier to have good maturity if you have climate more warm.
Right.
But we see some accident with storm, la grêle.
Right.
Oh, oui.
Le grêle, hail and other
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
violent
So,
weather incidents that come. Yeah.
in general, perhaps better for vineyards, but with big new accident, we can destroy all.
Right.
So I don't want the changement of climate, but we know is better for now. Is better for quality and quantity.
Right.
But the another thing is perhaps the changement of climate can change the grapes and can change the wine.
Right.
And we are afraid of acidity disappear.
Right.
That's why in 2020 the harvest begin in August and finish in August.
Wow.
It's no good. It's a kind of revolution.
Wow.
Normally, the grapes in Champagne is autumn grapes, autumn fruit.
October.
And the fact to cut in summer to preserve the quality, to preserve the acidity, we don't know where we go.
Yes.
Right.
You have to
Right.
adapt, and it was very bizarre.
Right.
So we can cut early, more and more early, but there is a border.
Yeah.
A moment is not possible. And last week, a big part of vineyards disappear with frost, and perhaps it is another changement with the climate.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much, Thierry and Marie. And I hope that you can now go eat a nice dinner if you haven't already. But we are so honored that we were able to spend this time with you. We've learned so much, and the wines are just stunning. And we say this all the time, but we can't wait to come see you. And we can't wait until you can come see us. And it's darn true. So thank you to Grace Under Pressure, to Benchmark Wine Group, and all of you who joined us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy these fantastic champagnes. À votre santé. And
Champagne.
merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Merci, Champagne.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Bonne